Before the fame, before the formula, before Einstein became the most recognized name in science, ... there was only silence. A boy, ... small, fragile, quiet. So quiet his parents thought something was wrong. So introspective that doctors suspected a mental disorder. At age 3, he still didn't speak. And when he finally did, he repeated words as if trying to decode the very language of the universe. But what common eyes saw as delay was, in truth, a code being processed, a delicate construction, an emerging pattern. The seed was already in the soil, even if invisible on the surface. It was the law of gestation acting with precision. Because every great purpose is born small, every miracle begins without form. And every brilliant mind needs time. Time to grow in silence, far from the spotlight, in the hidden soil of pain and solitude. While the world screamed for normality, he dove into invisible patterns. While others rushed to fit in, he walked slowly. Because he was already on a road no one else could see. Albert Einstein wasn't born with the answer. He was born with a void. An open space within his mind. A space that needed to be filled with questions, with chaos, with rejection, with doubt. The pressure the world put on him to speak early, to think like everyone else, to obey the rules, was part of the process. It was the heat required to activate the DNA of a mind that carried a higher calling. He wasn't a genius yet. He wasn't anything yet. But the code was already written inside him. The mathematics of time, the physics of faith, the invisible equation that says, first, you become, then you receive. And becoming demands pain. The pain of being excluded. The pain of not being understood. The pain of seeming wrong, when in truth, he was simply different. Deep down, he didn't need a special gift. He just needed to survive the time of the seed, to wait with discipline, to persist in the silence, to embrace the pain without abandoning the destiny. The law was already in motion, and even if no one could see it, the seed already carried the fruit. Time passed. Albert was now a slightly older boy, but inside, still carried the same silence. He wasn't like the other boys. He didn't enjoy sports. He didn't stand out in conversations. He got scolded for being distracted, for daydreaming, for asking questions even adults couldn't answer. At school, teachers gave him labels. Disobedient, lazy, a problem for the system. But what they didn't understand was that he didn't want to memorize answers. He wanted to understand the nature of the question. Germany's rigid education system didn't tolerate that kind of thinking. To them, a good student was the one who obeyed, not the one who thought differently. Einstein didn't fit in. And every time he tried, something inside him resisted. It was as if the universe itself was saying, "This is not your path." But then, on an ordinary day, a simple moment changed everything. Albert was home, sick. He was about 5 years old. To distract him, his father placed something in his hands, a magnetic compass, a small object, dull, silent. But as he watched the needle spin and spin, something exploded inside him. Why does this move without being touched? What is this invisible force acting beyond sight? What governs this? He was just a child. But in that moment, the call was born. Not a call with a voice, but a call wrapped in mystery. In that instant, the question became the fuel of his soul. And from that moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. He didn't yet know what he was searching for, but he could feel there was something greater behind it all. A pattern, a code, an invisible structure beneath the chaos. The compass pointed north, but Einstein's soul was pointing toward the infinite. And even without knowing the final destination, he took the first step. Because when the seed hears the call of light, it breaks through the earth, even without guarantees. The soil was still hard. The world still judged him, but something greater had already been activated. the law of gestation was in full motion. And even if no one could see it, the tree had already begun to grow. Not every great story begins with a clear answer. Sometimes the universe whispers a question, and the world shouts back, "Forget it." Albert was growing up, but the world around him kept trying to break him. Every step outside the line was punished. Every idea outside the standard, ignored or ridiculed. School was a battlefield. While others memorized formulas, he wanted to understand why time was relative. While teachers exalted authority, he asked, "Why must we accept everything just as it's told to us?" The response: warnings, punishments, low grades. He was kicked out of classes, discouraged by mentors, and the wound began to open. Maybe I'm really not good enough, ... He tried to conform, tried to silence his soul to fit the mold. For a while, he almost believed the problem was him. If I think less, maybe they'll like me. If I stay quiet, maybe they'll accept me. But the truth doesn't stay silent for long. He decided to follow the family's advice. He'd pursue a safe career. He applied to the Zurich Polytechnic School, one of the most prestigious in Europe, and he failed. Rejected to the eyes of the world, it was yet another sign he wasn't a genius, just a failure. The weight of expectation crushed him. The label broken promise stuck to his forehead. It was just another frustrated young man. No diploma, no direction, no money. Life seemed to be saying, "Give up. You weren't born for this." And it was right there, in the darkest point, that the gestation began to shift. Because it's when the soil tightens that the root decides to grow. Einstein could have given in, could have become just another worker, living an ordinary life. But there was something inside him, a divine discomfort. Something that said, "You're not lost. You're being prepared." The refusal of the call is not the end of the story. It's just the part where the hero tries to run from destiny, before realizing destiny had already chosen him. The law of gestation was in motion. There was no harvest yet, but there was silence. There was darkness. There was pressure. All necessary for the genius to grow roots deep enough to bear the weight of the glory that would come. Because the greater the fruit, the more time the soil demands. Albert Einstein didn't have a mentor to guide him by the hand. There was no teacher who believed in his potential. No great master who said, "You were born to shine." In fact, the opposite was constant. You dream too much. You're too stubborn. You question too much. But in the midst of abandonment, he made silence his shelter, and solitude his library. While others chased titles and jobs, he chased understanding. Not to prove something to the world, but to decode the universe. It was in dusty books, forgotten equations, and the writings of ancient philosophers that he found the echoes of something familiar, something that made him feel less alone. Spinoza taught him about God, not as a being with a face, but as the eternal order sustaining all things. Newton showed him the language of physics. Maxwell revealed the mystery of the invisible field. Mach presented the limits of human perception. Each author, each phrase, each discovery was like a candle lit in the darkness of his soul. There was no mentor, but there was direction, and that direction came from within, from the flame that never went out. Even in the face of defeat, he began to study on his own, with fury. He wrote formulas by hand that no one around him could understand. He read in depth while tutoring to survive. He slept on borrowed couches with books stacked beside his bed, and little by little, his mind began to expand, as if the universe, watching his silent dedication, whispered, "Now you are ready to receive the next code," because that's how the law of gestation works. It tests your persistence before unlocking the next level. It hides answers in places only the truly determined dare to search. It only delivers the fruit to those who love the process. Einstein was becoming not just a scientist, but an instrument. It wasn't about being famous. It was about being a channel. a channel for the hidden order behind the apparent chaos. He didn't memorize formulas. He felt them. He heard them. He invoked them. And so, even without a visible master, he became a disciple of the cosmos itself. Because sometimes the greatest mentor of your life is the silence no one else dares to hear. The year is 1905. Einstein is 26 years old. No PhD, no university position, no prestige. A complete unknown, working at a patent office in Bern, Switzerland. He spent his days reviewing mechanical inventions that weren't his, and his nights buried in scribbled notebooks, calculations, and endless questions. To the world, he was just another clerk. But inside, the universe was boiling. What had been planted years before, in silence, in rejection, in pain, now demanded to be born. He had no lab, no team. But he had something no one could extinguish: clarity, hunger, and faith in an invisible pattern. And in that unlikely setting, Einstein did the unthinkable. In a single year, minus 1905, he wrote for scientific papers that would forever alter the course of humanity. For seeds blooming all at once. For fruits harvested by someone who never abandoned the process. The first paper explained the photoelectric effect, laying the foundation for quantum physics. The second proved the existence of atoms beyond doubt. The third introduced the theory of Brownian motion, linking chaos to order. And the fourth, most explosive of all, the special theory of relativity. And with it, the equation that would echo through the centuries. E equals mc. Energy is mass. Matter is compressed light. The universe is not static. It is dynamic, flexible, relative to the observer. Time is not absolute. Space can bend. Reality depends on perspective. Einstein had touched the language of God, and what was once invisible became word, became formula, became truth. But the world didn't applaud him right away. The academic elite resisted. The scientific establishment mocked him. Who is this nobody? A clerk trying to rewrite Newton. But the code had already been activated, and no force on earth could bury it again. Because when gestation ends, birth is inevitable. Truth may be ignored, mocked, fought, but it always wins. Einstein had done his part. Even if the world wasn't ready, the fruit had been delivered. Fame came, late, but it came. Awards began to arrive. Lectures, invitations, interviews. The equation the world once ignored was now headline news. Albert Einstein had become a global symbol. But with the light came the shadows. The world was plunging into chaos. Europe was burning with extremist ideologies. And he, a Jew amid the rise of anti-Semitism, became a target. His work was banned in some universities. His books burned. His name blacklisted. Those who once ignored him now hunted him. Posters appeared in the streets with threats. The German government began to monitor him. Colleagues turned their backs. Institutions closed their doors. But Einstein did not back down. Even in the face of danger, he used his fame as a shield and his voice as a sword. He denounced Nazism before the world was ready to admit it was real. He stood for peace when everyone cried for war. He gave refuge to persecuted scientists, risking his own safety. And when he fled Germany for the United States, Einstein didn't just bring luggage, he brought wounds. Wounds from watching his people being hunted. Wounds from seeing his science used to build bombs. Wounds from realizing that the same genius who explained the universe was now being asked to help destroy it. It was he who warned President Roosevelt about the destructive potential of nuclear fission, a warning that would accelerate the development of the atomic bomb. But later, he regretted it. He said that if he had known what they would do with it, K would have become a watchmaker. The external war blurred with the internal one. And in that moment of the journey, the hero understands. The true enemy was never the world. It's what you become when you forget why you began. But Einstein never forgot. In the United States, he spent his final years fighting another kind of hatred. Racism? He aligned himself with black intellectuals, exposed the hypocrisy of the American system, refused to attend segregated events. It's called racism, America's worst disease. Because he knew the universe is a unity. Everything is connected. To divide human beings by color or origin is to violate the very code of creation. Even when the world celebrated him as an icon of science, Einstein used his voice to remind us, human worth stands above intellect. He wasn't just a mind, he was a conscience, and the invisible war. He fought every single day, with words, with presence, with faith. The white hair had taken over. The voice had grown softer. The body, tired, but the mind? Albert Einstein's mind still saw patterns no one else could see. He spent his days walking alone through the corridors of Princeton, gazing at the sky, contemplating the unity of all things. He had already achieved everything the world values: fame, awards, recognition. But none of that mattered anymore. Because Einstein understood, now more than ever, that it was never about him. It was never about the prizes, never about being the smartest, never about being right. It was about listening to an invisible call and answering it. It was about deciphering the code that holds the universe together. And at this point in the journey, Einstein finally saw with clarity the compass from his childhood. It wasn't an accident. The pain of youth, not punishment. The humiliations, the losses, the silences, not injustice. They were all part of the pattern. He understood now. The universe is not chaos. It's a dance, a living architecture, a mathematical symphony played by invisible hands. And every equation he wrote, every line he scribbled in solitude, every theory the world resisted was a prayer. Not religious, but sacred. Einstein had spent his life trying to hear the Creator in the margins of physics. And when the end came, he said, I want to know God's thoughts. The rest are details. That was the essence. Behind the science, there was faith. Behind the logic, there was surrender. There was soul. Behind the mind, he knew that life, like energy, is never lost, only transformed. And he, Albert Einstein, was no longer just a man. He was now an echo, an eternal echo of the invisible order, a living reminder that the impossible is only impossible until someone refuses to give up. In the end, the story of Albert Einstein is not about formulas. It's not about Nobel Prizes. It's not about fame or genius. It's about a pattern. The pattern of a seed that was ignored, of a mind that was rejected, of a voice that was silenced, but never stopped growing from within. It's about someone who trusted his own darkness, who believed in the invisible, who kept planting even when nothing seemed to bloom. Einstein is living proof that the universe does not reward those who are born ready, but those who remain true to their nature throughout the process. He didn't succeed despite the pain. He succeeded because of it. The pain pushed him inward. The silence trained him to hear the whisper of the universe. The solitude led him to the presence of what the eyes cannot see. And this is what few truly understand. Before the light comes the pit. Before the glory comes the ground. Before the fruit comes the silence of gestation. Einstein simply followed the pattern. He became before he had. He planted before he harvested. And he believed before he saw. The world sees the result and calls it a miracle. But the miracle was the process. And you? How many times have they called you slow, strange, lost? How many times have you felt out of place, as if your mind didn't fit in the world? Maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's the code. Maybe you're in gestation. You're not invisible. You're being prepared. You're not small. You're deep. And like Einstein, you don't need to be accepted. You just need to endure and keep growing, even when no one understands. Because the seed no one sees today could be the fruit that changes the world tomorrow. So the question isn't whether you're capable. The question is, will you hide or will you bloom?